Hi there. I know there's just too many fancy videos on this YouTube, and I think that's overdone for telescopes and stuff. Um, I am a master amateur astronomer, and I'm just kind of like a Prince and the Pauper kind of thing. I don't have the budget to produce fancy videos, but I have more knowledge than any of these people doing fancy videos for telescopes. So, this is just kind of a practice skit for my buying telescope guide. Um, just a rough draft, but let me say telescopes. Well, it's pretty simple. If you want to buy one, it's not, it shouldn't be that complicated. It's as simple as this. Um, you're really not going to see anything in deep space unless you spend maybe like $2,000 or $3,000. The only way to see anything in deep space is to use an extremely wide telescope that isn't electronic. This would be the Dobsonian telescope. So, a Newtonian reflector Dobsonian, which normally isn't electronic all the time, it's more steered by your hands. So, that's what I started with in 1998. That was my first professional telescope I bought that I didn't even know how to use. So, there's a device. I mean, again, like I said, you're going to love me for this video because even though I don't have a bunch of fancy graphics and visual aids, I'm sorry, I'm poor, but my brain is more powerful, I'm telling you, than any of these silly fools with all their fancy graphics and hundreds of thousands of views. It doesn't matter how fancy they look. They don't know it all. So let me give it to you straight. So basically, it all boils down to this. Look, if you want to see Saturn, Jupiter, like razor sharp, they're not going to be like big. They are going to be detectable. Detectable to the extent where you will see just their basic details. So Jupiter, like, you'll see a couple of its cloud bands, but you're not going to see like intricate details in the patterns of its atmosphere, things that are called like festoons. But like I'm telling you, like, it's not hard to see a planet. So Saturn, for example, Saturn can be seen perfectly, almost like a textbook or a picture, like any photograph. I mean, Saturn is the only planet that lends like a bank lends money. It lends itself to very spectacular observation quality. And Saturn and the moon are about the only things that you can see to an unrealistic standpoint in person. But again, the point is this. Here's the bottom line. All I can tell you is if you really want a good planetary scope, I recommend the Celestron 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain. So, in astronomy, you have to spend money. Like, here's my map of the stars there. Constellations. You have to spend quite a bit of money if you want to get a good view. So, I'm telling you, you're not going to win if you spend under $300. You're just not going to win. You're going to lose. You're not going to have the ergonomic handling of the telescope you need. to be able to be comfortable and to have excuse me to have the easy maneuvering and ergonomics, you have to spend money. But there's a basic level of ergonomics you have to have with a telescope. So I'm sorry to say, but you can't go out there and spend $150 on a telescope and expect to crack open the sky. It doesn't work that way. The whole telescope industry is rigged, I feel, to the point that if you really want to see stuff, you got to spend money. $4,000, $5,000. But again, as a starting point, I recommend the Celestron 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain. It's about a $1,200 scope. It has a 2032 millimeter focal length. So the way things work in the industry is focal length. So the distance the light travels from the beginning to the end, from the time it enters the telescope till the time it hits your eye, is the light traveling distance through the mirrors in the tube. The light waves come in, they bounce off the primary mirror, they go from the primary mirror to the secondary mirror and out through the eyepiece. So that time, that distance it takes to travel the light wave before it hits your eye is the focal length. And that's what determines the magnification of the telescope. So the lower the focal length, the less you're going to see a planet. So you cannot buy an EduScience $20 tabletop telescope, 350 millimeter focal length, and see Saturn's rings with it. Okay, you might see Jupiter's moons with it, of course, but focal length is where the power is. So like if you have a 4,000 millimeter telescope, which would be something like a Meade LX 200 16-inch telescope for $15,000, then you're going to see some stuff like super details in star clusters, nebulas, planets, the moon. The moon is pretty awesome, though. You can pretty much see it. Well, you can see anything on the moon with any size telescope. Any telescope works for the moon. But again, you want to be comfortable, like with the handling of the telescope and the quality and the durability of the telescope. So you always want to go all out when you get any telescope. You can't. This is not a business to be cheap in. You've got to blow some money here. So there's so many telescopes out there, and they're all kinds of prices. But I'm an expert, I'm a pro, and I know what works here. So, if you want a respectable, decent, reliable, exciting telescope that's going to really give you the capacity to really zoom in on the moon and stuff, you need to start high. So I would start with a 2,000 millimeter telescope, a Celestron 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain. I've had 11-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain telescopes that are 2,800 millimeters. The thing is, the moon, I've had a $400 Celestron Nexstar 4SE telescope next to a 11-inch Nexstar Celestron 2,800 millimeter telescope. The Celestron Nexstar 4SE telescope was about, I would say, 1,200 millimeters of focal length, and the other one was 2,800 millimeters. The 4SE Celestron's about $400. The Nexstar 11, which is not really manufactured anymore, was about $3,500. And I had them side by side, and the Nexstar 4SE telescope at low power looked exactly like the $3,500 telescope. I'm sorry, The Celestron Nexstar 4SE telescope at high power looked just like the $3,500 telescope at low power. So when you get up, I guess you could spend $400 on a Celestron telescope, and the moon would look the same as it does through a $3,500 Celestron telescope at low power. So really, as a pro, I can tell you the moon can look exactly the same through two different telescopes that cost tremendously different prices. But don't use Meade Instruments Corporation. I've had several of their telescopes. They all break down. The remote controls go out. The display goes out. The programming goes out. The motors go out on those telescopes. The gears go out. I mean, I do public outreach astronomy. I'm actually a very famous amateur astronomer, and I go to movie theaters and people pop out the door. Sorry to say, I charge them $20 each to look through my telescope because I am a serious pro rock star at telescopes, and I have a lot of publishing behind me. I made scientific history when I photographed the aurora borealis in West Texas in the middle of a meteor shower with a Perseid meteor. So all that publicity and photography and news articles hang in the University of Texas library here in El Paso, Texas, on the third floor in the administration office hallway. Or you can simply Google NASA West Texas, 3 words, and click on the red aurora, and that's a very special photo I took. But my purpose in life is to open a telescope tour agency for city and rural or countryside astronomy. Very simple project, just trying to have a little kiosk at the mall here locally at Cielo Vista Mall and book reservation time on my telescopes for city astronomy and rural astronomy. So we would be selling like $40 reservations at the mall to look through, $1,000 telescopes, and $100 reservations to see galaxies just outside the city limits. But I also am trying to open a telescope cafe out here, a telescope patio cafe. So I have a page on Instagram called El Paso Telescope Cafe. So let me let you in on a little secret here. I am quite a visionary individual. I feel I'm a very special person here in life. I memorized every star that you can see with your naked eye. I'm very, very skilled amateur astronomer, believe me. You can just Google my name. You can search the hashtags on Instagram: magic UFO, secret UFO, top secret UFO, Sky Genius. Well, Sky Genius I haven't used in a while, but I'm a pretty famous amateur astronomer. But my skills are crazy. Like, I just can find any star in the sky. I can find any object in the sky without a computer, without anything, just with my eyes and a map. If you give me an advanced map, I can locate anything. So I'm very trained in this art. I've seen and used mostly every single telescope there is out there, and I can just give you the best advice. But again, like I said, honestly, I mean, if you don't have the $1,200 to buy a Celestron Nexstar SE, an 8SE Celestron Nexstar, if you don't have that kind of money, any of the Celestron Nexstar telescopes are good. If you want to get a 4SE for $400, go ahead and do it. It's pretty flimsy and small. I had a Nexstar 4SE, but my first one was a Nexstar 6SE. Now they make the CPC 11, which is $2,800. But again, focal length is the key. Also, I'm sorry I didn't discuss eyepieces. So, like, the millimeters on an eyepiece, the lower the millimeter, the higher the power. The higher the millimeter, the lower the power. You always want to get a 40 millimeter lens. That's a very low power eyepiece. It will give you a very wide view through any telescope. You can't use a 40 millimeter on any telescope. It's mainly for very powerful telescopes like 2,000 millimeters and up. You want to put a 40 millimeter on there. But normally, when you're using a telescope, always start with your highest millimeter eyepiece at low power so that you get a wide angle on the sky and so you can find things. you'll never find anything. This is why people are so confused. You have to have a very wide angle view of the sky to be able to navigate and maneuver. So you got to look at the lowest power. Like binoculars are low power. So your telescope is like binoculars. Your telescope is like a pair of binoculars if you put a very low power eyepiece on it. Once you find something at low power, then you can change to a lower millimeter eyepiece, which will give you higher power. So you only want to zoom in on things like the moon and the planets. Again, with eyepieces, you got to go expensive. Teleview is state-of-the-art eyepieces. And Orion telescopes, I mean, if you can't afford everything, you can go with Orion. You always want to get, Meade telescopes makes good eyepieces. They don't make good telescopes. But you can get the Series 5000 Meade instruments eyepieces. You always want to get at least a 67-degree field of view, 82-degree field of view. Teleview makes a 100-degree field of view. What I'm talking about here is the apparent field. Sorry for the technical lingo. But if you want a really wide screen format, plain and simple, when you look through your telescope, the higher the angle, the more widescreen it'll be. So if you have a 100-degree field of view, you're going to have like a spaceship. Excuse me. A spaceship window view. So Plössl is a type of eyepiece that has a 50-degree field of view. Those are standard eyepieces when you buy a telescope. I use the Celestron Excel eyepieces, XCEL. They're very affordable. They cost like $80. They have a 67-degree field of view. Very nice eyepieces, 12 millimeter, 25 millimeter. And like I said, you always want to go at least 82 degrees on an eyepiece, so you get an ultra-wide view field. So that's about it. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to hit it big on YouTube. I deserve to. I just not good at film production and animation and all this. But I am just a simple, humble amateur astronomer who knows more than most people in this world about the stars. I have totally mastered the sky. I memorized both hemispheres of the Earth in the sky. Like I said, I know every star visible to the naked eye. I'm really, really good at this. I've been doing this since 1998. Some of the things I've seen are NGC 2477. It is an open cluster in the constellation of Puppis, which is below the celestial equator. To see what your declination limit, your celestial declination limit is for your latitude, you need to take 90 degrees and subtract your geographic latitude to get that figure. And that figure is celestial declination. So to not be so fancy here, what I'm talking about is this. Latitude and longitude in the sky. So just like the Earth, geographically, the sky has an equator. So you can see below the equator in the sky depending on your latitude. So I'm in El Paso, Texas. We're 31.5 degrees above the equator. So astronomer David Malin of the Anglo-Australian Observatory taught me that if you subtract if you subtract your geographic latitude from your 90 degrees, that'll give you the value. Well, in subtraction, I forget what it's called. In division, it's called a quotient. I don't know what it's called in subtraction. The difference, that's what it's called. The difference between 90 degrees and your geographic latitude is a certain value that is on star maps. It's called declination. So, in the celestial maps, 0 degrees is the equator. So, for example, if you subtract my latitude geographically, 31.5, let's just say 32 degrees, from 90, that'll give you 58 degrees? So on a star map, you can see down to minus 58 that value of latitude on the star map. So I can see 58 degrees below the equator. You can figure that out for wherever you are on Earth. Just find your geographic latitude, subtract it from 90, and that will give you a value of celestial declination. Okay, so even though you're using your geographic latitude at 90 degrees, subtracting your geographic latitude from 90, that value you get, the difference is not geographic, it's celestial, meaning that it's only usable on star maps. So that value tells you where on the star map below zero your stars will cut off at your latitude. So my stars cut off, like for example, there's a constellation called Eridanus, normally visible in Australia, but because I'm in West Texas in southwestern United States, I can see the last star of that Australian constellation called Achernar barely clip my horizon, very low. I mean, my thumb was about, like, the star was as high off the ground as my thumb was held at arm's length. So it was pretty low in the sky. So that was an experiment to see the declination limit. But anyway, I love you very much, all you folks. I hope you can support my channel. I'm really trying to get more subscribers. I know so much, and you know, this is just a rough piece. You know, the funny thing is, I'm 43 years old, and ever since I started my telescope hobby 20 years ago, I never, you know, when laptops were hot, I just couldn't see myself buying a computer or a laptop because I felt that that takes me away from the world. You know, it puts me in my own little world, and it just isolates me from people. It isolates everybody from anybody. You know, computers and laptops, even your cell phone now, obviously, unfortunately. But, you know, the thing is, instead of buying computers or laptops, I bought telescopes and took them out in public so that I could meet people and make friends and teach people the universe and be my own celebrity, showing off my knowledge. So, you know, so that's why I don't own a computer, because for the past 20 years I've just been spending my money on telescopes. Every time I could have bought a computer, I thought, do I want to stay at home or do I want to be outside meeting people with a telescope? So that's the thing. You know, and I don't like isolating myself on computer programs and computers. I like to be natural and just see nature and be with people and show them the universe, you know. So anyway, take care. I hope this video has been very helpful for you. And I just kind of just don't understand all these folks trying to be so fancy with their 260,000 views and all their animation and film on how to buy a telescope. You know, sometimes the simplest people know the most and are the fanciest. So hey, take care. God bless you. Hit subscribe for me, please, and check me out on Instagram under Chris Grohusko, one word. You can type hashtag UFO Pilot 1, UFO PILOT, and the number 1 to find my Chris Grohusko page. You can type Magic UFO and Secret UFO to find my other pages, like Only Stars and Planets. That's another page on Instagram, all one word. Hashtag Magic UFO and Top Secret UFO will take you to my pages on Instagram. Hey, take care. Nice meeting you. And that's about it. All right. Well, I will see you again. And I will hope to produce better productions. This is just my first, so I'm kind of starting at the bottom. It's not my first YouTube video, but it's like my first, you know, telescope buying guide. Hey, take care. All the best to you.